welcome to another video. So in this video we're going to be painting up the hologram iPad thing on the siege breaker for the Horus Heresy, and here's a couple of the paints that you're going to need. You're going to need Thousand Suns blue, Bathoth blue, black and white. There are other colours, but I didn't record that, and I'll explain where they are when we use them. So here we are, just base coating the hologram area, which is like a little epic scale space marine coming out of the pad. It's kind of cool, with Thunderhawk blue. I took about 3 or 4 layers to get a full opaque base coat, which is kind of what you want, and then just take your time, use a hairdryer if you need to get it dry, and just make sure it's entirely covered, and make sure you get your brush right into all the little gaps. And then once it's done, I got a 50-50 mix of black and Thousand Sun blue, and then give it an all-over wash. If you've got like a blue wash, that could kind of work, like an ultramarine blue contrast paint. And then once that's done, I come back in with the Thousand Suns blue and start picking out the raised areas. And basically from this point on, you're essentially just going to be picking out the raised areas and adding Bathoth blue into your Thousand Suns. Until you're almost up to a pure Bathoth blue, and then you're just going to be adding white into the mix, and really sort of fixing in on the highest sort of brightest points. Try to use a decent brush with a good point. I'm using a size 1 from Rosemary CO series 33. There's a link in the description if you want to check them out. And as you can see, it's just constantly just going over him, picking out lots of little dots, a little bit of blending on the shoulder pads and the power pack, and just trying to pick out the harder edges, and to create that sort of transition. You could probably wet blend this if you really wanted to, sort of keeping it dark at the bottom and brighter at the top, but I figured that this is probably the quickest and easiest way of doing it. And then once we've done this, we're going to move on to the actual screen and the freehand, which is super fun to do. So again, just keep adding those colors in, and just keep working up. And if you go too bright, then you can make a glaze of Thousand Sun blue and then glaze back over the top of it, and that should bring the brightness down a little bit and then tie everything in. So here you can see that I'm pretty much near the end. It's almost like a 50-50 mix of white and Bathoth blue at this stage, and I'm just picking out the sharpest, most prominent points on the little hologram, just to make everything sort of pop out. And that's just getting the last final highlights in. But if this looks too bright for you at this stage, then use that Thousand Suns blue glaze. So for the edge highlights, it's the exact same color, and basically what you want to do is just build up an edge highlight around the edges of the hologram, and this will kind of make it look like it's a little bit bright, and it's kind of casting light onto the surrounding edges of the pad. So I've kept a lot of this in as much as I could for real time. This is some Thousand Sun blue and black, pretty much almost a little bit brighter than the wash that you used on the hologram, and it's a glaze consistency, and I'm just going to start glazing over the screen. Now I've kept one in for complete real time so you can actually see the glaze going on and how quick this takes to dry. So as you can see, I'm just moving it on, making sure that the pigment is where I want it, and this is me just blowing on it lightly, and you can see it dry really quickly. And that's kind of what you want with your glazes. You don't want them to be there for ages. They should be able to be dry in about 10 seconds at the most. And then we just come back in again with another one, and we just continually building up these thin glazes until we get a nice transition and a slight bluey tint in the top corner of the screen, and then adding a little bit of white or Bathoth blue to the mix. I created like a sort of highlight color, and I'm just going around edge highlighting the screen. As you can see, I've already edge highlighted all of the black, and I've obviously painted the buttons. So for the freehand, from the screen highlight, I just added a little bit more white into it just to brighten it up, added a little bit of water just to thin it down a little bit, and then using that really good point on the series 33 brush, I'm using just freehanding in the symbol, and I am using the screenshots on the Warhammer page from the studio paint job as a reference and a guide of where everything is. Now, obviously mine is not going to be 100% like the studio team, because I'm just not as good as them, but I think I did pretty okay. And you'll see me later on trying to sort of brighten and glaze in highlights up on the left hand side of the little grid. I could have probably gone a little bit brighter, but I think this turned out pretty well, and I'm really sort of pleased with the overall result. So just keep sort of working on the lines and just picking out the details and using your reference. Obviously you don't have to use the reference or the screenshot of what the studio team have done. You can pretty much put whatever you want on here. I figured that this would look kind of cool and try to get it as close to the actual official box art as I could. Kind of sort of see if I could do it, because I think freehand is something I don't do enough of, and I figured, you know, I'll try to get a lot of it in. But I've literally not asked, but if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, this would be a really good time to do so. Just smash that subscribe button, like the video, share it with your friends, drop a comment, and all that good stuff. And there's a Patreon members area if you want to check that out. It's completely up to you. So as you can see, just sort of extending those lines, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in, I'm going to brighten it up a little bit more, and I'm just going to sort of like get the little dots in and the little pings in, and things like that, with slightly brighter highlight color. Now you will see me very shortly start glazing that left hand side of the grid, and that is basically sort of like to brighten that up, as though, you know, when you look at a radar, it's kind of got that sort of like cloudy washy color as the line goes past it, and that's kind of figured that that's what that is. So I've sort of just like glazing this in just to brighten that area up. Obviously, you know, you don't really need to do that if you don't want to. I was just sort of like seeing if I could actually do it. And here we go with a lot brighter color now to sort of really get those little things to pop out. And all I was doing here for this brighter highlight is to add more white into my mix. And this is basically in my original mix that I used on the glaze for the screen originally. So just, you know, just adding a Bathroth blue and white into that just to really sort of ramp up the color. You could, if you don't really want to use white, because white can make the paint come chalky, you could maybe use a little bit of ivory or ice yellow just to get that luminosity in. And there's the glaze again to sort of try to sort of brighten up that left hand side, sort of like the radar type effect that you sometimes see. So once this is done, I'll just be picking out the highlights, and I'm going to try to do a little bit of writing. Now, some people like to try to get letters in. I just prefer little squiggly lines. You know, it's really small. You're not really going to be able to read it. This is tiny, but it kind of gives the impression of writing, and that's kind of what you want. So just do a little bit of that, and then we're going to go into a little bit now with the green element of the hologram. Now, I didn't film any of the colors that I used for this, but I'll let you know now which colors I've used. So what we're going to be starting off with is Caliban green, and a little bit of Warpstone glow. It's almost like a 60-40 mix. Initially I started with Caliban green and you couldn't see it at all, so I added a little bit more of the Warpstone glow in, and what I'm doing is I'm basically just painting it in a little sort of rectangle into that top corner, and this is where that sort of like matrix type looking grid is going to be, and it's going to be a lot brighter with the highlights and the lines coming down and everything else. So just take your time on this, and if you make any mistakes and you want to tidy up the square, then just get your original base coat that you used for the screen and just sort of cut into the green just to make it more square. But just take your time. When it comes to freehand, I've generally found that you don't rush, just take your time at it, and then it'll sort of come in. So what I'm going to be doing now is, once I've got the green in, I'm going to be adding a little bits of Warpstone glow, and it's almost like a glaze, and I'm going to be pulling the color to the uppermost area of the top part of the little rectangle. As you can see, I'm sort of bringing the brush backwards and forwards and trying to get that pigment to the top uppermost part.
So I want it bright at the top and a little bit dark at the bottom, and I'm going to continue doing that. Now for the line, I've added some moot green, and initially it wasn't that bright, so I added a little bit of white into it, and you'll see that later on when I actually start really sort of brightening it up. I add the white, but at the moment this is my original mix with some moot green, and I'm sort of just doing that sort of graph-like lines, one down the side and one along the bottom of the square, just to sort of tidy it up. And again, just really take your time, making sure that your hand's nice and supported, and you know, just let the brush do the work. So I'm just doing it on the top, and then I'm going to do these weird little lines down. Now these didn't come out as well as I wanted them to. They were a little bit messy, and I did try to correct them, but you know, it's one of those things that I think my paint wasn't thin enough when I initially did these the second time, and it kind of screwed up a little bit. These looked good initially, and when I went in to sort of brighten them up a little bit, I think my paint wasn't thin enough, and it kind of messed it up. So it was a little bit annoying, and I did try to correct it. In hindsight, I should have probably just gone back over with the Caliban Warpstone mix and just started again, but you know, I was recording, I just wanted to get it done. So here we are, adding a little bit of the white in, just to brighten up these sort of edges and the grids. And it's when I do the lines on the top is when I cock those up, and I try to fix them up. But yeah, you know, mistakes do happen, and it's just a matter of trying to fix them if you do. So as you can see, it doesn't look as good as it did, and this is me now, like, I've tried to correct them, and I'm going back in with a brighter color just to sort of fix them up. And yeah, so for the sort of like a red line, there's like a line of red dots going from like a darker red to like a yellow. I was originally going to try to draw little squares, and I figured that that was going to be nuts. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to use a freehand in a straight line of Mephiston red, and then I'm going to do a couple of dots on that line to sort of create it look like little buttons and icons on the screen, and it's basically the same colors that I've used for the red buttons on the side of the pad with those 4 buttons. So it's Mephiston red, and then Evil Sun Scarlet, Troll Slayer, and then a very fine dot highlight of Cadian Flesh Tone. But on this little line here on the screen, I don't use Cadian Flesh Tone. Instead, I use a little bit of yellow to sort of like have a yellow dot. And yeah, so you'll sort of see me now coming in with the orange little dots, and these are little tiny. I'm trying to keep my hand as steady as I can, and then I finally come in with the yellow one here to sort of finish that off. And I do this twice. I do it sort of like to the another line below this, and you know, it's exactly the same. Just repeat what you've just done, and then you're pretty much done. And you know, I'm pretty happy with how the freehand come out. It's freehand is something I don't do enough of, and I think this turned out pretty cool. And this is the entire Siegebreaker finished, gold glued back into place, the base done, and you can sort of see the pad. I'm pretty pleased with how it looked in its entirety. So yeah, if you're liking my content, please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, share, all that good stuff. And obviously you can check out the Patreon page and the members area if you want to. And then there's the pad in all its finished glory next to his silver hand. Absolutely love this miniature, really enjoyed painting it. Looking forward to doing a lot more Horus Heresy stuff. So, and I'll catch you in the next video. Goodbye for now.